Throughout history, humanity has been shaped by the struggles and alliances of nations. The specter of a Third World War, often referred to as World War III, looms over the collective imagination as the ultimate catastrophe, a conflict that could reshape civilization, redraw borders, and even threaten the survival of the human race itself. While such a war remains, thankfully, a hypothetical scenario, the world is not without danger. The potential triggers for a conflict of this scale are numerous, complex, and deeply intertwined with the political, economic, and technological realities of our time. To understand how World War III could arise, it's important to examine the general conditions that would make such a conflict possible. First, major military powers would need to be involved. A confrontation limited to smaller nations, no matter how intense, would not escalate to a truly global war without the participation or intervention of the world's strongest countries. Second, the conflict would span multiple theaters, involving battles on land, sea, air, and increasingly in cyberspace and even outer space. Third, the methods of warfare would likely be hybrid in nature, combining conventional armed conflict with cyberattacks, propaganda campaigns, economic warfare, and the ever-present threat of nuclear escalation. Most critically, World War III would not necessarily begin with deliberate intent. Rather, it could be triggered by miscalculation, strategic missteps, or accidental escalation. Among the many scenarios envisioned by analysts, perhaps the most frequently discussed is a conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan. Taiwan, a self-governing island claimed by China as part of its territory, sits at the heart of one of the world's most sensitive geopolitical fault lines. Should China attempt to forcibly reunify Taiwan through invasion or blockade, the United States and its allies, such as Japan and Australia, might intervene militarily. This, in turn, could escalate rapidly, drawing in regional and potentially global actors, transforming a regional crisis into a worldwide conflagration. Another highly plausible scenario centers on NATO and Russia. If Russia were to attack a NATO member state, such as one of the Baltic nations or Poland, the alliance's Collective Defense Clause, Article 5, would be invoked. This means that an attack on one is considered an attack on all, compelling every member, including the United States, to respond. The result could be a full-scale war across Europe, with the terrifying possibility of nuclear weapons being used if either side perceives its survival to be at stake. South Asia, too, presents a flashpoint for a potential world war. India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed neighbors, have a long history of conflict and mistrust. If a major terrorist attack in India were traced to a Pakistan-based group, India might launch a significant military strike. Pakistan, feeling existentially threatened, could retaliate, possibly with tactical nuclear weapons. Such escalation could draw in other powers, like China or the United States, either as participants or mediators, widening the scope of the conflict. The Middle East, with its dense web of alliances, rivalries, and unresolved conflicts, is another region where a localized war could spiral out of control. A direct conflict between Iran and Israel, potentially triggered by disputes over Iran's nuclear program, could see the United States and Gulf allies supporting Israel, while groups like Hezbollah and countries such as Syria might join on Iran's side. If other major powers, such as Russia or China, were to intervene diplomatically or militarily, the regional war could take on global dimensions. On the Korean Peninsula, North Korea's unpredictable regime and nuclear arsenal present another potential ignition point. If North Korea were to launch a missile attack or invade South Korea, the United States and its allies would be compelled to respond, potentially leading to a massive military engagement. Should China feel its interest threatened or fear instability on its border, it might intervene as well, heightening the risk of a broader war. The digital age has introduced new vulnerabilities. A state-sponsored cyberattack, whether originating from Russia, China, North Korea, or elsewhere, could cripple vital infrastructure, power grids, banking systems, or military communications. The difficulty in attributing such attacks with certainty could lead to accusations, retaliatory strikes, and rapid escalation, all while the world struggles to discern the true perpetrators. The South China Sea, a vital maritime corridor rich in resources and claimed by multiple nations, is another potential flashpoint. A collision or clash between U.S. or allied ships and Chinese naval forces could trigger immediate military responses, drawing in regional countries and possibly escalating into a wider conflict. The advance of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons adds a new layer of unpredictability. Imagine a scenario in which AI-powered drones or missile systems malfunction, are hacked, or misinterpret data, resulting in accidental strikes. The fog of war could quickly thicken as nations struggle to determine whether such incidents were intentional, accidental, or the result of hostile cyber interference. Human leaders might lose control over automated military systems, leading to rapid and unintended escalation. The collapse of a nuclear-armed state, such as North Korea or Pakistan, could create a power vacuum with global consequences. External powers might intervene to secure nuclear weapons and prevent them from falling into the hands of rogue actors or terrorists. However, such interventions could provoke conflict with other interested nations or internal factions, sparking a wider war. Climate change and resource scarcity represent more gradual, but no less dangerous, pathways to global conflict. As water, food, and minerals become increasingly scarce, nations may be tempted to secure their survival through force. Regions such as Africa, the Arctic, or Central Asia could become battlegrounds as countries vie for control over dwindling resources. Economic collapse, too, holds the seeds of war. A global financial crisis could destabilize governments, empower nationalist and militaristic regimes, and erode the norms and institutions that keep peace. Nations may blame each other for their economic woes, and as diplomacy fails, military confrontation could become the tool of last resort. The Israeli-Arab conflict, long a source of regional instability, could reach a new level of intensity if a larger coalition of Arab states, possibly backed by countries such as Turkey or Iran, were to engage in full-scale war with Israel. The United States might back Israel, while other global powers could support the Arab coalition, turning a regional conflict into a global one. Africa, with its complex tapestry of ethnic, religious, and political divisions, is vulnerable to mega-conflicts that cross borders and draw in outside powers. Civil wars in regions like the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, or the Congo could escalate if major powers intervene for strategic, resource, or humanitarian reasons. The militarization of space is no longer science fiction. If a country were to disable another's satellites, disrupting GPS, military communications, or early warning systems, nations could lose their ability to command and control their forces. The resulting mistrust and confusion could prompt preemptive strikes, expanding the conflict from the ground to the heavens. Perhaps the most frightening scenario is that of an accidental nuclear launch. Throughout the Cold War, there were several close calls, such as the 1983 Soviet false alarm, in which technical malfunctions or misinterpreted signals nearly led to nuclear war. In the event of a mistaken launch today, the speed of modern weapons and the short timeframes for decision-making could leave little room for de-escalation, unleashing a rapid and devastating chain of events. While these scenarios represent the most commonly discussed pathways to global war, there are less likely, but still possible, triggers. Terrorist groups acquiring weapons of mass destruction, a bioweapon pandemic blamed on a rival state, secessionist movements in a nuclear power leading to civil war, or misinterpretation of strategy by AI systems or automated command structures. Across all these scenarios, certain common elements heighten the risk of escalation. Misinformation and propaganda can cloud judgment, sowing confusion and mistrust. Miscalculations, whether about an adversary's intentions, capabilities, or willingness to respond, can turn minor incidents into major crises. The rapid pace of modern warfare, especially when cyber and kinetic operations are combined, means that escalation cycles can unfold in hours or even minutes, leaving little time for cool-headed diplomacy. Finally, mutual defense treaties, while intended to deter aggression, can also pull more nations into conflict, expanding the scale and stakes of war. Despite these dangers, it is important to recognize that war is not inevitable. Most countries, especially those possessing nuclear weapons, understand the catastrophic consequences of a Third World War. The devastation wrought by nuclear arms, the interconnectedness of the global economy, and the shared challenges facing humanity all serve as powerful incentives for restraint. Strategic diplomacy, back-channel communications, arms control agreements, and international norms remain our best tools for preventing escalation and maintaining peace. The lessons of the 20th century are clear. Wars may be started by miscalculation, pride, or folly, but they are always easier to start than to end. Preventing World War III requires vigilance, patience, and above all, a commitment to dialogue over destruction. The future remains unwritten, shaped by the choices of leaders and citizens alike. By understanding the risks and working tirelessly to reduce them, humanity can continue to avoid the abyss, striving instead for a world defined not by war, but by cooperation and peace.